Hello and welcome to today's live masterclass session that we're running for you in this group. Now, we are delighted how good this group is. It's got loads and loads of members in it who are very, very active, asking questions and also sharing their experiences. So please keep doing that, because if you've got a problem, somebody else has got the same problem. So keep the momentum going in this group. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, we asked a question in the group. What is the one thing that is holding you back before making the decision to actually start opening your coffee shop? And as you can see on the screen, 76% of you said, I've got no idea how much it will cost and how much I will make. It seems to be the biggest question that you had during that survey. So we've decided to do this live masterclass on that subject for you.
So just a little bit of admin. If you can put a little comment in the comments column and just to say that you can hear us okay and that everything's working. These Facebook lives are technically...
it's quite nice to know that you're listening and we're not just talking to ourselves. So please put a comment in there.
They can be a bit a bit hard to manage technically based on bandwidth and all that sort of stuff. So you never actually know whether it's going out live. So we've done these in the past and perfect. Yeah, we got Dustin.
Yay,
thank you.
Thank you. Well, for those of you who don't know us, we are Andrew and Claire Bowen, and we are authors of The Daily Grind, How to Open and Run a Coffee Shop That Makes Money. And I still pinch myself that it's the best-selling book all over the world, and it's which is absolutely brilliant. So we work with people on a one-to-one basis as coffee shop coaches, as I said, all over the world, and we also run the coffee shop, the Startup a Coffee Shop Club, which we'll talk more about at the end.
Yeah. So. Today, really, and thank you for, we got lots of people now saying they can hear us and see us, which is great.
Thumbs up.
So today we're going to go through three main things, really, around, you want to know how much a coffee shop would make and how much, because they look busy places, don't they, as you go past. You think, well, that must make nothing. Everybody knows the price of a cup, how much it costs to make a cup of coffee, because in the press every other day, they're telling you, well, coffee costs about 15 pence, 20 pence or 50 cents to make, and the coffee shop is selling it for £3 or £4, and everybody's making an absolute...
So you must be making an absolute fortune.
So it's so you might think from an outsider's point of view, there might be license to print money, but as with all things, there's a lot more to it. Now, the successful ones do make a lot of money, but there are some real watch-outs, particularly for startups, particularly if you're thinking of opening a smaller scale coffee shop or cafe. People come to us and they don't want to go too big. They feel it's too much, it's too hard, or it's too much of a cost. So
it's more
a lot of people.
It's a safety blanket. People think, well, I'll go small because it won't cost as much and it won't be as much of a risk. But the reality is, it's not necessarily a good thing to go too small.
And we'll show you how that is and how that affects your metrics, having too small a unit as we go on. But just to kick us off, there are effectively three levers. So any of you out there who have done any project management at all will know about this. And if you're anything you build, anything you do, anything you make, there's three levers, which we'll talk about the three things that affect your project. We're going to talk about the costs and give you a simple list really of, from our experience, how much things cost from and to. And then we got some examples of a break-even spreadsheet, which I think will be really, really useful for you to understand how the numbers work. Because if you research stuff on the internet or you read, or in a lot of the business books, it's very, very simplified, the business model. When you ask what the margins are, what the profit is, it's a very simplified.
Yeah, a very prescriptive sort of figures. And in reality, it's not always as simple to define.
Yeah, and we'll explain to you what the one thing that really gets in the way of people in truth, and what is the thing that kills most of the coffee shops that we or cafes that we come into contact with, that we get a lot of people ringing us with this very same problem. So we're going to talk about that. So let's go onto the levers then first. So with any project management, as I say, anybody out there who've done project management will understand these straight away. So when you're building something, opening something, making something, there are three parts to the equation. The cost, how much things cost, the quality you want. So do you want a BMW or do you want to afford, and the time taken, how long does it take? You want a house built tomorrow, or do you want it, or you're not worried how long it's going to take? So these things are all linked together, as you can probably understand, see where I'm going here. So if you want something cheaper, then the quality might stay the same, but the time taken to finish it will take longer. So we get this a lot with people on a really tight budget.
Yes.
And they haven't got the cash, which we know is tough for a lot of people.
And with this scenario, obviously you reduce your costs, but you take a lot longer to open your doors, and that's costing you money because you've probably still got to pay your rent, and you're not getting an income. So it's all in a balance. So
it's not always the best thing to do to just go as cheap as you can and take as long as possible. If you're doing it on the side, then that might be okay. Again, if you want it shorter time taken, if you want it to be done open fast, then it's going to cost you more. And you see where I'm going with this. The three things are linked. And if you want great quality, then the cost goes up as well as the time taken. So the three things go up there. If you want better quality, it takes longer. If you want it taken, if you want really top quality and take even less time, then the costs go through the roof. I haven't even bothered to put that on there.
But you've got to think about this at the very beginning, because you've got to look at your pot of money and decide how much you've got to spend on it, how good a quality unit that you want, and how long you want it to take.
Yeah.
So it's getting all these ducks in line before you actually press the button is really important.
Yeah, so understanding that, that's not exactly I know what you turned up for today, but that's underpins it all, really. Let me just take you through the some of the costs. We've listed out here the costs, and we'll just take you through them. The sort of things that you might not have thought about when you're looking through that coffee shop window and wanting to open your own coffee shop. Those are the sort of things. So we start with the legally stuff at the top.
Yeah, and if you look on the left-hand side of these columns, there's two columns of figures. The one on the very left is the lower end, and the second column is the higher end.
Yeah, so I'll just put that there. And we've had a few questions coming in as well, and we will answer them at the end. So keep the questions come in, please, and we'll do that at the end. So in terms of professional services, these are sort of things that people perhaps don't think about, but it is really important to get your ducks in line with the legal stuff. If you don't set up your business properly, you'll end up paying too much tax or not getting the tax breaks you need, or just breaking the law even. If you take over a lease or buy a property without a property lawyer involvement, then you're putting yourself at massive risk. I shouldn't need to really explain that to you. Any more details. It's like buying a house. You wouldn't buy a house without a survey on it, but why would you think about effectively taking a long lease on a commercial building where you're liable for everything without doing the leases? So an accountant, $100 to $2,000. Property lawyers can be expensive. $3,000. The cheapest we've ever paid really is about $3,000 for a property lawyer. Solicitor, if there's a business transfer, if you're buying a business from someone, there's a potential cost there. Other transfer of the staff, etc. Surveys, design. You might not want to have somebody design it. You might have a great eye for detail. You might think, well, but ultimately, the better designed the place, the more it's going to take.
Yes, and it's really, really vital to get that design. If you've got a design in you, well, great, you use your strengths, but don't dismiss the design aspect, because that's a mistake a lot of people make, is they say, oh, I don't need to have a design to do it, but it will allow you to have a better quality premises that you can actually charge more for, and in the end make more money.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one of the things around all this as we're going through is that there are some key things you can spend more money on than you actually think you possibly needed to, but ultimately they will give you a massive reward later down the line, because you know, a really well designed place, not only ergonomically, it'll save you loads of time in terms of staff and labor costs. People, you know, if the fridges and all the equipment's in the right place, then that makes a massive difference. And then if it's an aesthetically pleasing place, then you're going to go to it. So just think about yourself, put yourself in the customer's shoes. You know, when you go to visit a place, do you like to go somewhere that looks nice and has a great vibe, or do you want somebody that's a dive? You know, some of you might like a dive, but ultimately the places that are full are nice. You're not just selling coffee anymore in a coffee shop. You're selling a lot of other things that we talk about in our book. But it's a place for people to go to meet. It's a place to work. It's you need a different mix of, depending on what your values are or what you want the place to be. It will affect the design, how many seats you got, what type of seats, how comfortable the seats are, all that sort of stuff, how high they are, how short they are. Excuse me, how big the tables are, all that sort of stuff. So that design bit, we've harped on a little bit about that, but that's important. Architects cost money, specialist engineers you might need, planning consultants you might need. Some of these things you might not need at all, but they're just, I would, somebody's asking to take a screenshot, I would say, yes. I would say that these are the sort of things that potentially could come and bite you in the bottom if you're not aware of them. Sometimes, there's some lease, you might even have to pay a lease premium to get access to the property. In the UK, we've got stamp duty. So if you pay, if your lease is above 150k, then you've got to pay 1% of the value of the lease in tax.
And ongoing, yes. So all these things, a lot of people don't think about, and they haven't actually thought about it. But this is a list that you can see with estimates from low to high that we would put on it, so that you're fully aware of the amount of money that you need to get this right. So
the next bit there is the internal bits. So, but this is where you can save a load of money if you buy if you take over units already fitted out. Then we say this to a lot of people. If you buy somewhere that's already fitted out as a restaurant or a cafe, this is where you can save a load of money and time as well.
Yeah, from the flooring, the electrics, the plumbing, the ventilation, the ceilings. I mean, it's listed there in front of you. But so don't, if a previous business has been in that unit, you don't automatically just go and take it over. You have to look at why that business failed and what you can do to turn it around. It's not necessarily a bad business that's failed. It's just circumstances, as we know from the last few years. Yeah. But taking over an existing kitted out business, which has got all the fixtures and fittings in it, will, as you can see, save a lot of money.
Yeah. And you know how hard it is to get tradespeople at the moment, people to do this stuff. And of course, if you can do some of this stuff yourself, then that's great, because it'll save you a fortune, but it will take you longer. So we go back to the time thing. So you'll save money, but it will take you longer. So once you've signed the lease and you're working, you're paying the rent on a place, then you're paying money. Although you might be saving a bit of money by doing it yourself, you're actually still got these overheads that you're still gonna have to pay anyway. So if it takes we opened from taking the keys,
one of our shops,
in 6 weeks. And we gave them a deadline of 4 weeks, but they missed it by 6. But they couldn't quite believe it because they were so used to coffee shops, independent, so taking months to open. But actually, it's quite possible if you get all your ducks in line and get some good people on board. Okay, they might cost you a little bit more, but ultimately you're trading for a lot longer.
And then you get your money back by trading.
Exactly. So the next bit here is the smallwares, the crockery, the cutlery, all that sort of stuff. Till systems can be expensive, printers, safe, CCTV, all that sort of stuff. So those are sort of just some watch outs there of things. And you go to the next one then, additionals. So rent deposits, potentially you might need to pay. Working capital, obviously you need some money to,
and that's a common mistake people forget. They pour everything into the the startup and forget about the working capital.
Yeah. So whatever you've got to start with, you need to save a good chunk of that really to operate. So if you've got a nest egg of say 50k, I would definitely say keep 10k back for the day-to-day working capital when you get going, because you'll need to carry on investing. It's amazing how quickly, if you get it all right, then the place will make money from day one. All our coffee shops have always made money from day one, from the minute we've worked up. And somebody in the group last week said they opened for less than 10 grand and they put it all on credit cards.
Yes.
So, that was a gamble, but it obviously worked out for that guy, which was great and it's good. So it does say that you can do this stuff quickly and cheaply, but ultimately we would always say you need some money left at the end of the project. Yes. Don't spend all your pennies before you go.
There'll always be something that you've forgotten about, so you need a little running fund.
And then finally, before you open, you have to buy stock to sell. So that's a cost. Okay, you might get away with not buying that and not paying for 28 days, but typically your first order with suppliers need to be paid up front, and then after a few months they would allow you to go on some sort of credit system. That's how we found it.
And initially, when you first open, most first-time coffee shop owners will find it very hard to get accounts that they pay 4 to 8 weeks after the supplies have arrived. Obviously, you have to pay it up front or put it on a credit card, but as soon as you can, get a relationship with those suppliers and get on the system of having credit.
Yeah, absolutely. And go back to them and ask them for better deals. If you paid your bills regularly and they haven't been chasing you for to pay, then you built a relationship with them, they're more than likely to give you a much better deal, which we always found.
It would definitely work for us.
So you can see some frightening numbers there. You got a sort of a minimum of 54, but obviously, as I said, some of this stuff, you might not even need if you take over, and some of it, if you can do yourself, you can save some money. But that's typically, you won't. It's hard to open for less than about 50k. Although it is possible, as somebody said, but it could, the big boys, their fit out, the Starbucks and the Costas of the world, a typical fit out for them will be 300 odd thousand. That's the sort of size of a coffee shop. So, that's what you would expect to open if you were opening a Costa or a Starbucks. Obviously, you're independent; you can do things differently and cheaper, which is always good. So the next bit, if we just go on to how much will you make? So this is probably what you've seen. And I've just noticed that graphic is covering that cost of goods there. That actually says 30% there. Let's see if I change that.
The gremlins have got into the system already.
That's right. There we go. That's
gone.
So, so Michelle's asked for cost of machines and grinders and stuff. Well, that was, where are we? Well, yeah, you did. It's not in there, is it? The coffee machine, all that sort of stuff.
But again, with coffee machines, grinders, you can actually lease those, so you don't have to put that as a major cost when you first start. And if you get the relationship with your coffee supplier, they will often lease you a machine and work with you to train you and make sure that it's all working properly.
Yeah. So again, choosing your coffee machine is something we get asked a lot. But it's about, you need to go back to your values really for that, to work out whether you need a real top end machine or a more of a robust workhorse. But a coffee machine will come in anything from 5k to 15 to 20k. And then the grinders on top are about $1,000 each, if not more, $2,000 each. So that's the sort of ballpark figure for that.
And you'll obviously need more than one grinder for decaf and different coffee. So you can spend an awful lot of money on that. And you're choosing your coffee machine is really important to go with your values, as Andrew said, because if you want a high-end quality coffee, you can't have a bog standard coffee machine. So and vice versa. So you don't want a bells and whistles coffee machine. If you just want a workhorse, you can get away with a workhorse. So working out your values and what you want to achieve will define how much you need to spend on a coffee machine, etc.
So this next slide is effectively what you'd find if you search on the internet effectively about how much a coffee shop would make. So cost of goods, that's how much the ingredients and anything you use to make would be 30% of the total sales. Labor costs around 35%. Fixed and semi-fixed costs, which is your rent rates, electricity, things that you can. Some things are fixed in stone. Some flex with higher sales, and they're typically around 20%, and then any loans. So you end up with about a 10% profit margin, but that doesn't tell you the whole story. If you build your business plan on that, then you will definitely be in trouble, because I'll show you something now that will explain. Can you see that? So this is a simple startup weekly break-even calculator that we use with clients, and it's very simple. It's oversimplified, but you'll see where we go with it. So these boxes here. So this one here is around setting your sales. So a typical coffee shop will have 100 customers a day, potentially spending $8 £8 per customer. So
and this is based on a
smallish coffee shop. Yeah, do a trading well smallish coffee shop. Okay, so that's 800 a day. And of course, then you've got to pay tax on that. So that gives you 5,600. That gives you 5,600. 5,600. Obviously, the tax in the UK it's 20%. Depending on what state you're in, it's all different. But you've got to calculate them. But for the sake of simplicity, that's 20% tax. So you're left with 4,400 net sales. Then your cost of goods around 30% of your net sales, and that will be when you start, that'll be higher. Obviously, you'll have a lot of waste, but as time moves on, you should be able to get that to about. I would target 25% after a year. Okay, it depends on your split of food and drink, but ultimately we operated on 25% cost of goods, and some of the big boys operate on 18-20% cost of goods. So, you should be able to get it well below that. But that's a typical good ballpark figure to start with. The one that people get caught up on is your wages. So if you look at on this side here, I've put in a minimum hourly wage of 15, which is £15 or $15, which is not unrealistic when you add tax and holiday pay and all that sort of stuff.
And pensions, and different things.
And it might be more in your part of the world. It might be more, but you can play around with this. But we reckon that you need at least, if you're open for 7 days, you need at least 2 people. It's very difficult to operate a coffee shop with less than one person in it.
Less than 2 people.
Or less than 2 people in it at any one time. It is possible. But the minute something goes wrong, or the minute they need milk, or the minute a problem happens, basically the place has got to shut.
Or the minute you need to go to the loo.
Yeah, the place effectively is shut. So as an absolute bare minimum, just about surviving, 2 people, 7 days, 10 hours a day gives you 140 hours. Okay? And that'll give you a wage of 2,100, which when you look at this, it's 47%. So all the stuff you see on the internet is around cost of sales, wage costs around 30%. That's really difficult when you've got a relatively small coffee shop not taking that much money. Although £800 a day will feel reasonably busy, and there are a lot of coffee shops out there doing £800 a day or $800 a day. These are the small ones. They're probably 15, 20 seaters. You see hundreds of them coming up. They churn over a lot, that sort of size place as well. And the typical rent on these places is about 12 grand a year, business rates, and then service charge on top. But after all that, and then power, so that's £308. So That is your £308, which is 10%, which is realistic. Then power, which I put there separately because the cost of electricity now is so expensive. Even the smallest of places it's costing you a fortune. So it really needs to be down as a set, particularly if you're in a hot climate and you need the AC going 24/7. Or even if you're in a cold climate, you need the heating going 24/7.
So it's worth factoring the power, as it's such a major thing at the moment with prices, as a separate entity on there, so that you know you've budgeted properly.
And then I've just ranked all other operating costs. So that's effectively everything else on your telephones, your window cleaning, your insurances, your broadband, all that sort of stuff. Will go in there. And then this place is making it's made £228 a week on this example, which actually, if you're one of these two people paying yourself, it's probably not too bad. But look what happens when instead of 50 customers a day, you get 100 customers a day, you get 50 customers a day. Very quickly, you're in a almost ridiculous situation where your wages come in at 94%.
Yes. And considering the fact we said that you can't really get away with less than 2 people at any one time, so being sensible and looking at these figures before you press the button will guide you a great deal to making the right decision to open in the right place.
And if you can't get the spend right, so $8 I put there is a typical sort of spend. You're trying to get people to buy a coffee and something, a sandwich and something, a slice of cake or something. The better your food menu, the better, the more attractive it is, and the more you'll be able to get your average spend up. Typically, our average spends, do vary in coffee shops from about 5 or 6 to 15, but the ones that are on 15 are the ones that got a proper, more of a restaurant-y menu. And the other thing to consider is if you so go back down 100, make it look so bad, but if your rent instead of 12 grand, it's 24 grand, and you think, well, that's not too bad. Now, again, you're going to do all that hard work for not very much. So you've got the trick, the secret to making this work, the secret to making to make this business work is to get your fixed costs as low as possible,
as tight as possible,
but to understand that you've got to get enough customers through the door to get you that break even. Otherwise, this bit now is crippling, and unfortunately, this daily sales, this number of customers is directly linked to how many seats you've got. So don't think just because you've got 12 seats and people take on average half an hour to drink a coffee, you're going to be able to fill all those seats all day long, 7 days a week. You're not. On average, when you think about a typical standard curve of distribution curve, a standard distribution bell curve, then you'll realize that only 50% of the day will be at maximum, or will be on average. Whenever you take maximum, the average will be half of that throughout the day. So, and if you've got 10 or 12 seats, don't think they're all going to be filled up, particularly if you've got tables of 4. So once you've got one person on, you might end up with a 25%.
Yeah, you've all seen the tables of 4 with someone with their laptop and a paper spread all over the place, and nobody else can join them. So it goes back to the design and how many seats you've got and how you lay out your coffee shop to maximize that.
Yeah, so that's the big watch out. Because just because you can have 12 seats in there, it doesn't mean you're going to do 12 times $8 times $16 an hour times 12. It's not. It doesn't work like that. It's much less than that. It's more like a quarter of the potential sales if you calculate it like that. And then also takeaway is different now. Unless you're in a transport hub, you used to be able to have a lot of takeaway, but the market's changed dramatically. Takeaway isn't as attractive.
Unless you're in a drive-through or in America or things like that. Takeaway in the UK has gone right down.
Yeah, and you can you can get drive-throughs are really good. If you've got a drive-through opportunity, then that's great. But again, you've got the same sort of issue. How many cars can you get through the drive-through per hour? That's your limiting factor there, not your seats. So if you've only got one window, how many cars can you get through an hour? Probably 15, 20 if you're lucky. So that your limited factor there. So all those things limit your potential sales. So go back to the presentation. Just bear with me a minute while I'm sharing my screen. So you can see that then doesn't really match up at all with what I've said to you before. So this is the stuff you'll get when you research it online, but the reality is different,
and it does vary an awful lot. So don't think this is right. This is what it's going to be. It will vary depending on your scenario.
There is a helpful guide, a calculator, which I can suggest you go to. It's on our Cafe Success Hub website. Don't worry about that extra long link. If you go to cafesuccesshub.com, at the top, there's a button that says cost calculator. Click on that and it'll take you to this page, and you'll be able to work out how much on average your coffee shop. It asks you, I think, 12 questions, and it'll give you the answer of how much your coffee shop will take. So now let me talk to you about the start of a coffee shop club. Just a couple of seconds before we do the Q&A. Effectively, when we talked around the importance of spending your money wisely, then how much would you pay to be on the shoulders of giants? That's what they say. How much would you pay if you could speed up your opening, if you could stop yourself spending lots of money on stuff that you didn't actually need, and you had some independent advice, not from a supplier that is selling you something? We had a situation this week, a really sad situation, where somebody opened their coffee shop. They were given lots of advice by a coffee machine supplier and a roaster, who obviously all they wanted to do was to sell them the kit, and didn't bother telling them that the unit was going to be very, very small, pretty too small. They had hardly any seats, and the location wasn't great either. And there was no advice in that. It was all around, you should do it, and this is what you should have, and this is what we got to sell you. And because they were selling, so be very wary of taking advice from people who are selling you stuff. Okay, that should be easy to understand. But sometimes you can, like, go into a car salesman and they'll tell you that's the best car, and it's perfect for you, even though it's a 2-seater convertible, and you got a five kids in your family and a dog, and they want to sell you the car. They won't want to sell you what is practical for you. So, which is where we come in, because our training, startupacoffeeshop.com. Our club has all the online training videos that you'll ever need, all the templates you'll ever need, all the spreadsheets you'll ever need, all the systems and processes, all the checklists. On top of that, a private community page where we answer personally all your questions. There's no long-term contract. How much would you pay for that advice? Having two brains by your side. So,
and our goal is for you to succeed. All we want is for you to succeed. So
it's normally £49 plus the tax, but for the benefit of here, for you joining us today, you can go to startupcoffeeshop.com and you can put in the code how much into the
didn't want to press that one.
You can put the code how much into the checkout,
and you will get the first month joining the club for £1, and then it goes up for the second and onwards, £49 plus tax wherever you are. But there's no long-term contract, so you can stop it at any time. And in that, as Andrew said, in that in the club, there's so much resources that we've built up over the years that we've been doing this, from working in our own businesses to coaching. And if there's something missing out of that, you ask us and we will put another module in. So it's not just fixed, it's ongoing, and we add to it all the time. So it's really important.
And this is the online training course itself. And this is some of the modules. We've got a menu module. We've got a pricing workshop. There's how the money works, how much profit you make, how the sales, how much they cost, a bit more of this sort of stuff we've just done today, but in a lot more detail. How do you choose the location? How to understand your guest journey? How to actually predict the sales of any particular given site is in there as well. So we've got downloads. If you want to work out how much something's going to take, we've got some really clever stuff there on how to do that. And this is available 24/7.
And you can dip in and out. You can relook at things. You can go back and forth to it at your own pace.
Yeah.
It's your vault. It's your club for you to use as you feel. And please, you ask us questions in our private coaching group, and we will answer. And if we can't answer it quickly, we will do a little module on it and post it.
Yeah, and we continue adding to it all the time. So that's enough of the sales pitch. So don't forget now, if you go to the front page of startupacoffeeshop.com, use the code how much and you'll get it for £1. All right. And that offer is on until the end of this week, because we are we're away from next week. So it's on from the end of this week. So if you just go back to the comments. Okay, so we got some comments already. So where we got is from Michelle. Is a drive-through a separate operation from the counter? Well, ideally, you really want. It depends how you do it, really, but typically you want the two things to be joined and mixed together. If you've got a high volume operation, yes, you would be able to split that, definitely. But if you're starting off small and it's not high volume, then you want the two things together. You don't want two coffee machines. You don't want two sets of everything. You can do it as one. So that's the way I would describe it. You can have completely separate, but again, drive-throughs are the way forward, in fairness. Even in the UK, if you can get a drive-through site in the UK as an independent, it's almost impossible to get a drive-through site in the UK. But I know in the States it's much easier to get a drive-through. I'd say relatively easier, but it is easier. So, but yes, they are. It is separate, but you would want the things to be joined together. You wouldn't want two sort of production centers when you're small. Jamie's asked about discussing red tape you need to go through. Well, that's really dependent on your where you are in the country, in truth, and
where you are in the world.
But it's not as bad. I think you can worry about it, but it takes some professional advice. So you never sign a contract or anything without speaking to an attorney or a solicitor. A lot of people out there, people get afraid of going to speak to their local town planners or their councils or the town halls. They get a little bit afraid of going in there, but a lot of these people are there to help you. And help you get through the red tape.
If you ask for help before you do something wrong, they will help you. They will show you what you need to tick and cross and dot the I's and cross the T's, and it's their job for you to open successfully. It's worth going and speaking to these people, which is what we did.
Jamie Thomas asks how important it is to have food, and if I cannot put it in the kitchen yet, how do I make it work? I think it's a real issue. If you think about not how you can that you can't do it, just think about how you can. Just imagine you run a little tiny food truck and understand the sort of quality of the kit of the food they put out. People expect reasonable food. I would do two things. One, I would have you need to make yourself famous for something.
Yes.
So do one thing really well. If you can't do much food, but just do one thing really well, whether it be a sausage roll or a taco or a breakfast burrito, just do that really well. Just don't focus on massive menus.
You got to remember that you'll never please everybody all the time. and not everybody going past the front door are your customers. So get it all in your head, get straight what you want to achieve and how you're going to achieve it. And yes, you will need food, and the quality of the food, better the quality of the food, and the speciality food, as in you're famous for something that people will come and see you because they can't get it anywhere else.
Yeah, it's really hard to get the numbers to work for the bit, as you saw with that spreadsheet. It's really hard to get the numbers to work for a $4 or $5 dollar spend. You've got to get the spend up, and the only way to do that is to give people something to buy. But just don't do it, even if you've got to make 50 breakfast burritos in your kitchen at home and bring them in. And just stick them get a high-speed oven and stick them in there. But be famous for something. Even if you sell out every day, do the Krispy Kreme job and sell out. But become famous for something. Just do one thing, but don't think you can do it without it. Unless you're on a railway station or a transport hub. But even then, if you've got two places,
they will. People still want something.
People don't like queuing twice.
No, they want something to go with their coffee.
Yeah.
Even if it's a grab and go or something. So you will need to do food of some kind of food there to get the spend up.
We've got somebody ask us about how do I get a loan when you don't have any money to start with. Well, that's a really tough one.
Yes. In
truth, I think you've got to be, if that's stumping you, then you're not really the right person to run the business, because there's going to be a lot more challenges down the road. So you need to be ingenious. I've seen situations where people have taken over a coffee shop, an existing business, for no money. So you could, if you're the right person, you've got the right business model, you could potentially walk into a coffee shop that is perhaps been for sale for a while, where the owner is stuck in a lease. They can't leave. They can't shut it down because they've still got to pay the lease. Remember, they may have signed a 20-year lease. Yes. So they can't get out of the lease unless they get a new tenant to come in. So there's a lot of these places around. So you could go potentially. I've known people have gone into those sort of places and just done a deal with the guy. The guy wants to retire. He wants to be gone. He wants his bills covered. He'll let you take it over nothing. Or he might say, well, pay me back over, 4 years. Do an in-out deal.
Yeah. There are opportunities out there, so people can do it, but it's harder to do it if you haven't got any capital.
Yeah, and that's it. But it's about getting the vision. You need that real clarity of vision to take people with you, so that you can get people on your side, and they want to back you, and they want to help you, and they want to support you.
And the other thing is having a business partner. If you haven't got any money, but you've got the ideas, if you went into business with another partner who did have the money and work, but again, the legals have to be right and signed up properly before you actually start.
Michelle's asked, what is the right size coffee shop sweet spot? So if you think about, there's a reason that Costa and Starbucks don't open in tiny little places. They do open on kiosks, but it's on a railway station or something. It's a micro thing. There's a reason that they won't open in something less than 2,000 square foot. It's because they know you need at least around 60 covers to make a reasonable, decent business out of it. So that's around it. So around 2,000 square foot would be the perfect solution, with outside space as well. Anything below that, anything below 1,000, it's really hard to make good money out of it. You can make money, but the other thing is, if you're in that small size, because a lot of people out there making money are actually taking money and running as a business, but they are an integral part of the operation.
So basically buying yourself a job.
Exactly.
Rather than having a business.
Yeah.
That you can employ a manager and employ people to work, then you're not there all the time.
Yeah. So that's the sweet spot. Around 60 covers, 60 seats. But if think outside the box, if you can get a slightly bigger place, then it gives you for the same amount, that gives you more options. So yeah, that's the sort of average size. Not saying we don't open a small place, but ultimately there is that risk of the limit how much you can take. Somebody's asked about leasing equipment. Is that a good idea? Spend all the cash Is it a good idea not to spend all the cash reserves on equipment, or is it better to fork out the money and use one?
Well, it's a good idea not to spend all your cash on equipment and leave you with nothing to run as a slush fund to actually run the business. It depends how much money you've got, because obviously leasing equipment, you will end up paying more than if you bought it. But if you haven't got the money to buy it, it's an option. And also with the leasing and hiring, if you have a coffee machine and a 2-headed coffee machine, for example, and you thought, hang on a minute, I'm doing better than I thought, I need a 3-headed. Well, then you can go back and see whether you can trade it up for a bigger one. Yeah. So there's pros and cons to both.
We've always done a bit of a mixture, in truth. So some of the stuff that we know that we're fixed with, some of this we would always, we had the money in the budget, we would always buy it. But we have leased equipment in the past, because we thought if we're going to spend all of that, we're not got enough working capital. So actually, you're better off leasing it for some things. And speak to your accountant as well, because the way that the lease appears on your books is treated slightly differently in terms of tax.
Yes. So speak to the accountant, and he will show you the benefits of the one versus the other. So your balance sheet looks better, and you don't pay as much tax.
We got one final question, I think, at the moment. In your opinion, is location better by going in a town centre or an industrial estate?
Ooh, now it goes all the way back to the very beginning.
Yeah, it does. It goes back to your values, goes back to what you want to do. So, if you want a coffee shop to become integral part of the community, and you want to or you want a coffee shop to serve the office people across the road, or if you want a coffee shop that will have lots more space, and you can be really flexible with, perhaps you want to do a roastery as well as a coffee shop, then that would work on an industrial estate, probably better than it would in town centre. If you want a really community-based place, then obviously somewhere in the middle of the community, not necessarily in the middle of the town.
Not necessarily in the town, in the middle of chimney pots, as we call it,
where people
where people live. So it all depends on what you want to achieve from your coffee shop, where you actually put it. But on the whole, town centre tends to be more expensive square foot as the suburbs, as industrial areas. So it all depends on the overall, what you want to achieve, who your ideal customer are, where they are, and how much money you've got to spend on it. So there's no hard and fast rule. I can't say, oh yeah, town centre over industrial centre, because it's not as simple as that.
No. So go back. So if you've watched my presentation I did at Excel last year, you'll understand how important it is to really spend some time on making sure you've got a real clear vision for your business, and that your values are in alignment with your business.
Yeah, crystal clear.
And because that will save you so much time in the future. So if you said to me, that person who's asked the question, is it better in a town centre or an industrial estate? The first question said, what sort of coffee shop would you want to open? Describe what you wanted, what your passion was, and what you wanted to get out of it. And then we'd be able to have that discussion. So on its own, it's hard to answer that question. Well, thank you, Michelle, as well, for that lovely comment about got your book for Christmas. It's packed with information. We're really, really delighted you got that, because actually, that investment in your book, it definitely will. It will have paid itself back already. It may put you off opening. It may actually, some people who buy the book, and some people who come on the course, and some people we meet after we've spoken to them, after we've had a soul searching with them, they sometimes decide not to bother doing it because they don't realize how complicated it is, and that's actually a good thing.
That is a good thing, because we've stopped you making a mistake and losing all your money and doing the wrong thing and all the rest. If you actually worked it out, well, actually, it's not quite what I thought it was. So that is a good outcome if we've stopped you making a mistake. But thank you for buying the book. That's really nice.
Brilliant. So I think we've just done all those questions and answers.
Can't see any more.
No, I think that's it. So yes, thank you for spending the last 49 minutes with us. As always, put comments in the free Facebook group. But what we really like to see is to see you join the club, the Start of a Shop club. So don't forget, go there now today, before this offer only lasts until Sunday night at midnight. Go there and put in how much in the coupon part, and you will be able to get the first month for £1. So it's absolutely no-brainer. It's a no-brainer.
And you will also get the recording of this session we will put it in the vault. So any previous masterclasses that we've done or we will do in the future, we put them all in the vault in the club.
Perfect.
So they're all there.
Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.